Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. Today is April 20, 2026, and April has witnessed a terrible spate of killings, most notably the murder of Dr. Serena Fairfax by her husband, the former lieutenant governor of Virginia, who subsequently took his own life as well in their home after being served divorce papers. Um, I'm doing this video just to quickly note something that I observed. Uh, I observed that um, there's been a lot of discussion on social media, right? As particularly amongst black people, whether it's Africans or it's Black Americans, um, regarding the unfortunate, the tragic, heinous murder by the former lieutenant governor. Uh, and however, the I noticed that non-black people and white people are not saying anything about it. Apart from, of course, the murder being reported on a mainstream, the major networks in a rather formulaic and understated tone, right? I haven't exactly parsed it out, but uh, it was just something that occurred to me that for some reason I wasn't seeing on my social media feed or anywhere else when white people or non-black people discussing it. But um, there's this flurry of discussions, right? Very energetic, robust discussion amongst black people, whether it's on the news or there was the controversial discussion, by Roland Martin, and many different pundits, right? Black pundits, and then of course individuals on their own, black academics discussing this as well on social media. But I hadn't heard any discussions, about white people, from white people. And I wondered, is it because Justin Fairfax sort of represents that, the poster child, he's of, um, the acceptable black person. Of course, he was Ivy League educated, he was a lawyer, and he comes from a family of very accomplished black people, right? His sister-in-law, as I said, was my professor, Lisa Fairfax. She was the one who she actually gave, um, you know, uh, during the Senate hearings for the first black female justice of the United States. That's Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who had been her classmate. They were both double Harvard, and so she'd given the uh, she'd made commentary, in support of, she'd given testimony, in support of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination, and she'd actually introduced her as a person to America. Of course, and Justin Fairfax's brother himself, he'd been assistant dean at my law school. In fact, when I graduated, and I'm not going to go there, but and they're both pleasant people. He also is double Harvard, right? And he's incumbent dean of, the Howard University School of Law. He had been dean of American University's law school, right? Assistant dean at my law school, where he'd been for a very long time. And so highly accomplished family. And, as I said, but, I thought of it. I wondered why weren't the white people, my former classmates, none of my former classmates, my colleagues who went to George Washington University Law School, who clearly knew him, weren't saying anything, right? And then yesterday we woke up to the killings, and of another person, an army veteran who who killed his seven of his own kids. Seven young man in his 30s, an army veteran who killed seven of his own kids and was subsequently killed by the police. This was in Louisiana, Shreveport, Louisiana. Uh, and I got this news from my former white schoolmates. They're the ones posting all of about this, and the news about this person is a deranged army veteran. And I noticed that on this one, whites have jumped on it, and I'm wondering the disparity because I had just been thinking, and I didn't post it, I didn't mention anything. I've just been thinking that why is it? It had been several days, and I noticed that whites weren't saying it. White people, non-white people weren't saying anything about the murder by Justin Fairfax, the former lieutenant governor of Virginia, and Virginia is like a very significant state in American history. Actually, Virginia has produced the most presidents, apart from Ohio. If you were to consider, presidents from Kentucky, right, who came from Kentucky, like Zachary Taylor. Then Virginia would have, is a state that's produced the most presidents, most American presidents. So Virginia is very important. Virginia, of course, was where George Washington himself came from, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson. Very significant state, and the number two man who almost became governor. He's committed this atrocity and nobody's saying it, and white folks aren't saying anything. And so it was just bizarre. It was something I noticed. Um, of course, this is a huge change, right? It's a huge change dynamic considering this is. I wonder if this is the most high profile politicians who's ever committed such an atrocity, right? Murdered his own wife and killed himself. Um, Politicians have typically faced scandal. So, many politicians have faced scandal. American politicians are supposed to be thick-skinned, and they're notably thick-skinned. Uh, People have tried to use a fig leaf, an excuse that he was unraveling because of some, um, you know, and it was a blowback from the 2019 sexual allegations against him, and that's the fact that his career was tanking. That uh, his political career was derailed. He was only 47 years old, right? He was only 47 years old, and setbacks happen setbacks happen to politicians a lot, right? It happens, and then many politicians come back from that setback. Bill Clinton was always plagued with, allegations of sexual misconduct, right? And throughout his political career, thank God he didn't go and, murder his wife or do crazy stuff, commit crimes as a result, right? Um, Not that I'm justifying sexual impropriety in office. But there have been so many, scandal and, political setbacks. They're part of the terrain of being a politician, right? And politicians are typically thick-skinned. So this is a very bizarre occurrence. I don't know if it's the most high-profile incident where an American politician actually killed his family, committed murder. Of course, there was a Harvey Milk case incident where but they weren't like high up politicians. I think they were in states. That was in California. The Harvey Milk was murdered by the um, the deranged uh, his deranged counterpart, right, by the politician. Um, so I thought this was just rather bizarre and wanted to comment on it. The statistics are very troubling, and um, yes, mental health is clearly implicated, but I've been doing videos. It's interesting that I've been doing videos and talking about how crazy is sort of normalized in America, and I probably shouldn't use the term crazy, not to be dismissive or blithe about something that's very serious. We don't know how much substance abuse plays a role in these killings. And I'm actually going to pull up the data on substance abuse in the US. 84%, right, according to the National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics, about 84% Americans uh, abuse drugs or alcohol, right? And one out of every three Americans uh, suffers a substance abuse disorder or any mental illness. That is significant, right? And so I'm gonna do a video and just go through the data, look at the data, and so we don't know how much substance abuse, which causes people, which impairs people's thinking, right? It makes people act in deranged ways. We don't know how much substance abuse uh, is implicated in these wild actions, these heinous actions of murder, right? Um, of course, the indications that Justin Fairfax was suffering from alcoholism, right? He had started to use alcohol. Was he using any other drugs? We do not know. Was he abusing any other drugs as well? Um, so it's kind of interesting, and this is we need to be able to resolve these issues. Again, violence is normalized in America. So is drug abuse, right? And drug abuse makes people act wild, right? In a wild, lawless manner, and it makes them murderous as well. It makes them, inclined to murder, right? So, in any event, I'm stopping this video here, and I will, you know, pull up, the statistics on the implications of drug abuse in America and mental health. My name is Oluro Timosha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.